Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Hite Namani.
The thing that stands out the most in my mind of the classes that I heard was, for some reason, this vision of Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana and referring to a painting which was just in front of him on a wall. And it was a painting of Srimati Radharani offering tulsi leaves to the lotus feet of Krishna. And in the background you see the figures of the gopis sort of looking through the trees, looking on. And so Prabhupada was talking about that painting and how Srimati Radharani is serving Krishna, and the gopis are assisting Srimati Radharani in her service to Krishna, and other gopis are assisting those gopis. And Prabhupada raised his finger and he said, so this is our philosophy, that we are the servants of the servants of the servants, and the further down the line you go, the sweeter that service becomes. So I remember so vividly how Srila Prabhupada raised his finger, moved his finger down and said, the further down the line you go, the sweeter that service becomes.
The only thing was when I got initiated, he asked me, what are the 4 regulative principles and how many rounds do you chant, will you chant? And I told him the 4 regulative principles, and then I told him I would chant 16 rounds. And then he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then he started laughing. And he said, I'm asking you if you're insured, because you have a spot on your face. I have a mole on my face here, and when I was younger, it was darker. And he said, you have a spot on your face, and once there was a movie star with a spot on her face, and she had it insured for a lot of money. And then he just started laughing, and everyone was laughing. He was just chuckling, and then he said, Krishna consciousness is your only insurance.
Another time, I asked him, what do you think about psychotherapy? What do you think about analysis? And he said, oh, I have some appreciation for it. He said, one of my children came back from college and was tapped his forehead. He wasn't right in the head. And so at that time in Calcutta, there were 2 wings to the hospital. There was a British wing and a Hindu wing. And he said, I spent a lot of money sending my son to the British wing to get help from a therapist from England. And I asked him, how did it work? And he said, for some time it did. He said he was, better, normal. And then he said, one day he left home and I never saw him again. So that kind of candid response to what might have been an impertinent question says to me that this was someone who had no guile. He was not hiding behind some kind of a facade of, Jagat Guru. He was a warm person who, if you asked him a question honestly and legitimately, he was there for you. He would answer your question.
Then the first time I actually got to see him was in Atlanta, where I had moved soon after reading that Back to Godhead. And he was only going to have a short layover in the Atlanta airport, maybe 2 hours, and so we didn't try to bring him to the temple, but the temple president, who was Balavanta Prabhu, and his wife Balavi, and Tara Dasi and Jamanjaya came up from Tallahassee, and we rented a VIP room at the airport, and I got to make a cushion for him because we didn't want him to have to sit directly on the, who knows how clean they were, the seats. And so I was very excited about that. And then when he finally came, I was just completely satisfied this was the, just to catch a glimpse of him was the satisfaction of everything that I had hoped, but far more so. And so there were a few people that we had told he was coming, and as many people as could crowd into this one room, and some guests. And one of the most important things that I remember from that talk was there was an Indian man there who was not coming to the temple, but somehow the temple had figured out how to reach out to him and brought him to have darshan with Srila Prabhupada. But he was a scientist, and so Prabhupada was talking with him, just chatting, and he asked the man what kind of science, and he says, we do experimentation on animals. And I noticed that Prabhupada was very unplussed. He was just completely composed, and he said, what animals? And the man said, oh, cats mainly. And again, Prabhupada was just as cool as you could imagine, and he said, all the animals don't get a chance? And I could tell how he was very sarcastic, and I had never seen this in such a exalted person. I had never known that sarcasm could still be helpful to somebody. And you could see in the man, it just really helped him to be a little contemplative at least. This was amazing to me.
What I was talking to you before we started recording, I was mentioning how when I had jaundice or hepatitis, contagious, it's jaundice that you get from water basically, or from contaminated food, but in India it's not uncommon. And I had jaundice, and I went to Srila Prabhupada and I said, Srila Prabhupada, I told him I had jaundice. I said, so what should I eat? And Srila Prabhupada said, only take Krishna prasadam. And I was just, oh, okay, Srila Prabhupada, fine, but what shouldn't I eat? And he said, don't take anything that's not Krishna prasadam. I just thought, that was like classic Prabhupada, kind of the way he could just answer in the most simple way. But what was there in that answer is Prabhupada's amazing wit, his extremely, dry sense of humor, but very, very deep humor. Like, I remember when we were walking in Vrindavan, and someone said to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, these devotees from Los Angeles, they're only taking Ekadasi preparations. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, advancement. Like that. And then everyone crowded close to him. Advancement, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, yes. And then somebody was trying to play the pundit, says, but Srila Prabhupada, it says in the Bhagavad Gita that grains, let's see how it is. Rains come from sacrifice, and grains are produced from rains, and all living entities subsist on food grains. And Srila Prabhupada said, his answer is, he said, very straight-faced, that is for those who are passing 7. So he said, that is for animals. And then, so everyone, that's amazing. So then, when Prabhupada got to Los Angeles, I wasn't there, but I heard the whole thing, and that Prabhupada had said about only animals, basically the summary is only animals need to take food grains. But I thought, Prabhupada's putting them on, and they don't know it. He's just completely playing with them, and they have no idea. And then he went to Los Angeles, and then they said, Srila Prabhupada, these persons, they only take Ekadasi preparations. was the same references that happened in Vrindavan on the walk. And then Srila Prabhupada said, "Oh, why is that?" And they said, and then they were shocked and they said, "But Srila Prabhupada, they say that only animals need to take food grains." And he said, "I take food grains. Do I look like an animal?" So, but I was so positive when I heard this incident, and I knew something of Srila Prabhupada. I think Prabhupada's playing with them. He's putting them on, and just in a very straight, way of speaking. They have no idea that he's joking with them. And I saw that. I saw Prabhupada's humor on many occasions, and it's not like a rowdy kind of humor. It's a very philosophical and almost like he could say this, and just very, very wonderful sense of humor. Extremely, charming, witty, everything, but you would not see it in a boisterous way.
Because what I had heard is that this one devotee had told me that he told Prabhupada that I was lazy. And so I was really brokenhearted, that I would think that Prabhupada would think I was lazy. Not that I'm not lazy, because now I know I am. But then I didn't feel like I was lazy. And I was really angry and also felt hopeless because there was just no way, that I was going to please Prabhupada or do anything right, at that point. So anyhow, Srila Prabhupada was there, and I went up to his desk. I had the courage. I mustered it up. And I said to Srila Prabhupada, I just folded my hands, and Prabhupada came up and smiled. And so I knew I could speak. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, and I got out a few words, and then I just started crying completely, like, whoa! I mean, it was deep crying, like I should have been in therapy or something, But Prabhupada sat there, and I was crying, Prabhupada, I'm a woman. There's no way I can please you. I'm a woman, and I have children, and they say I'm lazy now. And Srila Prabhupada, at that point, when he heard that, then I saw his arm go back, and he did this smile. It was like the universe or something. And when he did that smile, I just, oh my gosh, how could he think that was a smile thing, Because I was so sad. But that smile was like, he embraced me, with that smile. And then he said to me, he came close and he goes, "Are you reading my books?" That's what he said to me. "Are you reading my books?" And I was reading his books, because that's one thing that moms can do, okay? And when you're breastfeeding and everything, is you could read books, okay? So I was reading, I was all the way up to the book that he was finished with, and at that time it was probably like 7th canto, 6th canto or something, 5th canto, I don't even know. But it wasn't very much. But the thing was I read them. And so I said to Prabhupada, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I am reading your books." And he said, "Then you are pleasing me." Yeah. And I mean, you could imagine, and I just was so grateful, and I just felt so much love. That's why I say the unconditional love changed my life.
Prabhupada was at that time translating the 6th canto, and he was in this section with Ajamil. Now, of course, nobody had a book yet on the 6th canto. It hadn't come out yet. He's working on it. But Prabhupada's part of his entourage, who he traveled with, apart from his servant, who was Shruti-Kruti, I think, he had this boy named Nitai. Prabhupada had 2 Sanskrit assistants, Pradyumna and Nitai, and they were both grihastas. They both had a child, so they couldn't do it all the time. They would take one would go for a few months, and the other one would come and replace him, and he'd go back and spend. And then in this way, it was a nice system. So this time, Nitai was the Sanskrit assistant. So he wrote the verse on the chalkboard so that we could all respond and chant it, as Prabhupada taught. And Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana. And then after a while, men and women had chanted, Prabhupada told them translation. So he's the only one that has the translation because it's in manuscript form, Prabhupada, he would get the tapes from Prabhupada's dictaphone and transcribe what Prabhupada had translated the night before. Then when they get that, they would then send that to the BBT. And this is how the process of making a book would evolve. So Prabhupada tells him, read the translation, and he has these papers. And he begins to read the translation to that one verse. And it is the part of the Bhagavatam when Ajamil sees the Yamadutas coming for him. So I'll paraphrase it because I don't know the exact thing, but in essence, he's reading the translation. Ajamil seeing these Yamadutas, fierce-looking creatures, in fear, he calls out for his son. And he says, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. We didn't think anything of it. It sounded appropriate. But Prabhupada caught it. And Prabhupada took the microphone and he said, did I say 3 times? And we realized Prabhupada's talking to Nitai, who is sitting down there from the other. Prabhupada said, did I say 3 times? And Nitai wouldn't answer. He just kind of bowing his head and he's not saying anything. Prabhupada asked him again, a second time, did I say 3 times? He's still not answering. And we realize there's something wrong here, something going on, but we don't know what it is. And then Prabhupada leaned back in his Vyasasana and he says, I did not say 3 times. So this is the 3rd time. At that point, Nitai confesses. He says, no, Prabhupada, you didn't say 3 times. And then Prabhupada said the most wonderful thing. He leaned forward in the Vyasasana and he said, why 3 times? Once is sufficient. And when he did that, his hand was like a mudra. Once is sufficient. The whole temple erupted. Hari Bol! He said it with such potency and conviction that, once is sufficient. Once chanting. He said, why 3 times? And the whole thing made sense. And then Prabhupada showed a side of compassion, a side of him which is compassionate. He could have ripped into Nitai and blasted him, but he didn't. He just said, don't change anything that I have written. And that's all. And he went back and sat back and he gave the Bhagavatam class. And it was all about the glories of chanting the holy name. But that little incident there, I'll never forget it because it was a teaching moment,
That same year, 1974, I was married. I got Brahmin initiation because Prabhupada actually stopped us from taking Brahmin initiation too soon. They had written a recommendation letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you are going too fast. So that was probably October. We had to do a Brahmin test. There was 10 questions, what the significance of the Guru. And then instead of being initiated second in October, it was November. So then we got Brahmin initiation. And then we went in 76, we went to meet Srila Prabhupada again. And there was another wonderful realization for me after Srila Prabhupada installed the Krishna and Balaram deities in New Mayapur. Because it was like this, everyone was always visiting all the temples. Whenever Prabhupada would be in Europe, he'd be in France. All the devotees from Europe went to France. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada had been quite sick. But because Bhagavan was really begging to, please Prabhupada, you come, we have the deities to be installed. And so Prabhupada came, and there was three incidences. One was an amazing experience when Prabhupada was bathing the deities, Krishna and Balaram. And there might be a picture of this, but it's not a very, very well-known picture. Srila Prabhupada was first bathed with the big conch shells. He would bathe Lord Balaram, and then we had to bathe, and they were all about the same size. So they were like 3 instead of 2, Krishna and Balaram and Srila Prabhupada. So like friends. And then when Prabhupada had to bathe Krishna, he had to lean forward to bathe Krishna in front of Balaram, and he put his hand on Balaram's shoulder and then bathe Krishna like this. So when I saw this, I said, wow, this is spiritual world. They're the 3 friends together, Krishna and Balaram and Srila Prabhupada. Then a little later we had the big feast. Well, first we had the initiation again, 76, and I had one friend. She said, oh, how am I supposed to do? I said, you pay dandavats like this, and you say all these things, because I just had it myself. She said, are you sure? Because in those days we were not doing dandavats anymore. It wasn't allowed. I said, I'm sure I did it. You should do it. And when she did that, actually, I was looking at Prabhupada while she was paying her full dandavats in front of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had this big smile on his face, and there was a picture made of that. So when she got up, I said, Prabhupada was very pleased.
So my service, 1974, I was basically taking care of the cows, but they had me bodyguard at Prabhupada's house from 9 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning, right? Gave me a shotgun, 38 pistol, you know. I'm standing in front of Prabhupada's house. It's ridiculous, you know, how can we protect Prabhupada? He's protecting us in every way. So I'm standing there in front of Prabhupada. In those days we call it rank and file devotees. You know, I wasn't a GBC, I wasn't a temple president, I wasn't a sannyasi, I was a bhakta, right? With 2 shoes that didn't match, you know. Hippie, penniless, not able or willing or desiring to go anywhere. But I'm in front of Prabhupada's house, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, Prabhupada's light would go on. And then I would hear him speak. First I thought he was listening to a Prabhupada tape, then I realized, oh, that's Prabhupada, he's dictating. He's translating the Bhagavatam, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm outside, I never talked to Prabhupada, you know. So I'm out there in front of the house, and it starts to rain a little bit. So going down on the side of the house, there's a driveway, and underneath the house there's a garage. So I went down, opened up the garage door, blah, 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 and I went standing in the garage door doing my guard duty. And I didn't know that Prabhupada could come down through the house to the garage, which he did. No, Prabhupada. Oh my God. I offered obeisances. I said, Prabhupada, how can I serve you? You know, what do you say? You know, here's Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada is like a mountain. Stillness. His senses are not, you know, I think I told you that I saw one video clip where somebody wanted to show me something on the clip, and they put it fast forward, and there were all these devotees around, and they were all like this, and Prabhupada was just like this. So that's what the scene was like there. Prabhupada was like that mountain, and I was just like, you know, crazy, like how could, which. So when I asked him, Prabhupada, how can I serve you? He went like this. You can go where I won't go. Can you hear his voice? you can go where I won't go. So Prabhupada had just flown from Tokyo to San Francisco to Los Angeles to Dallas to Chicago to New Orleans to New York to Pittsburgh, and then he was going back to New York. He was going to fly to London, go to India, and he was traveling all 1974, right? Meanwhile, I didn't have any means to go anywhere, you know. I said, Prabhupada, where won't you go? He said, to the future. I was like, what does he want me to build a time machine? He wants me to go to the future? How do you get to the future, you know? And then he said, and how you treat the people there, you show them how Krishna loves them. And I just went like this. I couldn't process what he just told me to do. Of course, it's an instruction for all of us. It's an instruction, go where I won't go, and how you treat the people there, show them how Krishna loves them. And while my eyes were closed, he left. He went back upstairs. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. That was it. He just laid that on me and split. You know, that's like 47, 48 years ago. Okay.
I do remember one thing he said, that here in Los Angeles, many people go surfing. The devotees were talking about surfing, and then Prabhupada underneath his breath, because I was right there, and I could hear Prabhupada very clearly. And he was saying something underneath his breath, you know, and I'm like listening, you know, and he was like, suffers. So then, the devotees, the sannyasis that were there close, they said, Prabhupada, no, it's not suffers, it's surfers, Prabhupada, they're surfers. They're surfers, and they go in the water, you know, and they ride the board. And they were trying to explain this to Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, yes, he said, and they will ride the waves just like the dolphins, and they go right through the waves just like the dolphins. So they are getting ready for their next body. And, and we all just laughed, and Prabhupada's little hands were all pink, and they were so beautiful. And we were just so blown away by his exuberance and his vision. He had such vision. And sometimes when you go to the airport, okay, they would complain. The employees, they would complain, you guys leave all these petals on the floor. We gotta, you know, sweep them up. It's a big thing, you know. There's like 200 of you that come to the airport and got all these flower petals everywhere. Anyway, so they told Prabhupada that, right? And Prabhupada said, He said, so they are not complaining for all the cigarette butts on the floor, you know. And Prabhupada did so many things at the airport. You know, he would sit down waiting for his flight, and, you know, we'd be there like around him. And, you know, this lady that was there visiting our temple, she was a nurse, and she was, you know, a little eccentric. Anyway, she loved Prabhupada. So she was there, you know, seeing Prabhupada off. And so a few other sannyasis were sitting there on the airport bench, you know, with Srila Prabhupada waiting for the flight. And Prabhupada had his cane, and he was like this, you know, just waiting for us, looking around, you know. And then he was looking, he looked at the nurse, and then he looked at the devotees sitting on the chair, all the guys. He actually told them to leave so that this lady could sit down. Okay? Prabhupada was the perfect gentleman.
Prachur